This week on London Real, we have martial arts specialist and BAFTA-winning screenwriter, Geoff Thompson.
The ultimate fear was this fear of confrontation, so I became a nightclub doorman. You trigger the adrenaline so hard in them that all of their instinct just wants to run away.
Just because they walk away don't mean they ain't coming back.
I've had people confront me 20 years after a fight, and to them it was yesterday, and they're hugely violent individuals.
Come on, you cunt! Come on!
2 of my friends were killed in fights, and 2 of them were assassinated in their cars.
Some of us just died it better than others.
On each step of the pyramid, I wrote down a fear. Least fear at the bottom,
right.
Worst fear at the top. Then I basically just confronted those fears one by one until I'd overcome them. Writing has been more difficult for me than standing on a nightclub door with people threatening to kill me. It doesn't really matter what you are, because everything is just based on perception. It's whether where you are is where you love. If you surrender to potential, you become potential. When we change perceptions, we change reality.
London Real presents Geoff Thompson, Conquer Your Fear.
If you can master one thing, you can master all things, because the template is the same.
Welcome back to London Real. I'm coming at you from the Old Street Roundabout here in Shoreditch, which is the heart of tech here in London, and it's also the heart of London Real. It's where our studios are, and it's a fun place to be. There's a lot of artists here, a lot of, like I said, tech, and it's kind of a new and upcoming place, and it's kind of fitting that we're here as opposed to the West End where the BBC is and a lot of the media over there, since we're putting them out of business technically. And it's really changing. You can see this building behind me is like a new, very expensive high-rise. And then behind me over here is something called the White Collar Factory, which is going up, which is a 12-story building that's replacing some of the web startups that have been there for a long time, like Huddle and a few others. And actually Andy, the founder of Huddle, is going to be on Silicon Reel this week. So if you want to learn about his business, he kind of spends time between Silicon Valley and here. But I thought I'd give you a little refresher here in the roundabout we love so much, and we wonder sometimes why it's so goddamn ugly. And I'm going to take you through the tube. It's getting a bit of a makeover, the Old Street Station here in just a bit. But now I want to talk to you a little bit about my guest this week. And his name is Geoff Thompson. And Geoff is a fascinating man, to say the least. We had him on as a guest about a year ago, and he's definitely a guy that needs lots of shows to get to know him. He started off up in the north of England, really at a factory job. And I think he had a hard time getting out of his own shell, out of his own self, and trying to basically tell himself that he could be bigger than what he thought he could be. And he ended up going into being a doorman there to confront some of his own fears about violence. And if you're a man or a woman for that matter, we all have a relationship with violence and how it terrifies us, or for some people it enables them. And Geoff confronted this from the very beginning with something that he calls a fear pyramid. And it's something that if you have a second right now, you should write it yourself, and draw a triangle and write at the very bottom one of your most basic fears. And it could be, as Geoff said in this show, a fear of spiders. And take it to the top, and maybe that's a fear of death, or a fear of Mortal Kombat, for example. And what he did is he set out to basically start conquering each one of his fears individually. And he started with spiders, and he went to dentists. And you know, it took him right up on a journey of exploration, and he became a bouncer, and you know, broke his nose and broke his hands, and ended up studying martial arts and trying to figure out what would work in a street fight, because that's very different from what works in a martial arts gym. As I would be the first to admit, as I study Thai boxing and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know, let's be honest, that shit don't play in a pub when there are 2 people involved, or 3, and someone can put a pint glass into your head when you might be mounted on a guy, or you're throwing a punch and there's a knife involved. So, you know, Geoff addresses a lot of these issues in some of his martial arts videos. But you know, he took it a step further, and he started analyzing his attraction to violence and why he was always trying to, you know, kick the next ass or show someone that they were doing him wrong. And it's a great way to look at why we do things in this life. And you know, it propelled him to go further, to become a writer, and now he's a BAFTA-winning writer. And he wrote plays as well. And one of his plays that's on right now is called Fragile, and it kind of goes deep into his psyche to where he was abused as a 12-year-old by ironically enough, his martial arts instructor, and he had a sexual abuse issue, and it was compounded by his parents, you know, not believing him, and it got really complicated for Geoff. And you know, it's something that he ended up confronting this man later in life, and you know, it's been at the core of a lot of his issues. So it's a fascinating story. You know, Geoff can quote the Bhagavad Gita, if I'm doing that right, the Indian fable from many thousands of years ago, like it's going out of style. And he's got a lot to say. I don't even think we covered it all in this episode, but I really hope you enjoyed Geoff. He's got a new book coming out as well. I believe it's called The Caretaker, and there'll be a link for it down here. And please check him out, support him. He's also got seminars. He speaks in front of people. He speaks in front of inmates. You know, he does a lot of things. And so it's pretty interesting getting to know Geoff and seeing all that he has to offer. And I get stopped on the street all the time. Funny enough, I just got stopped by a guy at Old Street Roundabout. I tweeted out his picture, and his favorite episode is Geoff Thompson. So you know, it's crazy. He has a real fan base out there, and I think you'll like him, especially if you're one of those tough guys that likes to beat people up. You might see some parallels in Geoff's journey and yours. So there you go. You know, I just want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, the guys at Bulletproof. They make a fantastic coffee. I was actually on Dave Asprey's Bulletproof podcast this week. That should be coming out in another couple weeks. I don't do many podcasts. You know, we did Rogan about a year ago. I keep it kind of to myself. If you're one of the people that ask me for interviews, don't take it personally. I think I'm just too busy asking other people questions and, you know, not answering them. But Dave asked me a lot of questions, including he asked me what I would tell my 20-year-old self, and the best advice I've ever received, and my advice to 20-year-olds out there. And he hit me with those questions like a doctor at the end of his podcast, and I think I gave some pretty good answers. I didn't know that was coming. But it's a great show, and the Bulletproof Executive is a fantastic company. You know, some call them a biohacking company. They just try to make you into your better self, and that could mean by drinking a coffee that's free of molds and toxins and mixing it with a grass-fed butter and a brain octane oil, or that could mean hacking your sleep. Have you seen my video on YouTube where I give you 5 free tips and 2 free apps to hack your sleep? I tracked my sleep last night on my iPhone. Or a multitude of other things. That's what they do. And keep your eye out on these guys. Don't sleep on them. They're going to be around, and they're going to be getting bigger and bigger. And we're just so happy to be on board with them. And that's it. As you know, I got this, what I call a sister show called Silicon Reel, which is a lot like London Reel. Sometimes I wish I could get some of those guests on London Reel, because they have these awesome stories. Like we had the guy that runs Google Campus, which is right around here, which is a 7-story building that has like over 200 startup companies working out of it, and they just give back to the community. And there are some great stories on Silicon Reel, some awesome stories. We had a guy from a company called Kano last week that raised $1.5 million on Kickstarter to basically sell these tiny computers that cost $100 that you can pretty much put together, whether you're a 7-year-old or a 70-year-old. And I don't know, there's just some really cool stories, whether you're an entrepreneur or interested in tech or just interested in people. It's a lot of fun. So check that out. We're on episode like 43, and that's going strong. And the usual applies. If you want to hit me up, we're on Twitter. Send me a message at brian@londonreal.tv. We got a bunch of people out there helping us all around the world, trying to book guests and send the right people through here to London. It's a team effort, man. I don't do this myself by any means. So could use all of your help, and it would be much appreciated. And there you go. We got t-shirts on the way. Got a couple of partners we're working with, so we will have a link here to get some, I guess they call it merch, soon. And that's it. I'm going to stop yapping, and now I'm going to start listening to Mr. Geoff Thompson. Enjoy.
Okay, let's go. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Mr. Geoff Thompson, who is many things. You are a former bouncer, you are a self-defense instructor, a BAFTA-winning writer, a playwright, author, teacher. I've just found out you're a director. This is they say some criminals have rap sheet as long as their arm. Your CV is as long as my arm. You've written a lot of books, some on self-defense, martial arts, fear control, as well as your autobiography, probably a lot of people have read, which is called Watch My Back. Yeah. It was about you being a nightclub doorman. It was made into the movie Clubbed.
Yeah.
You're releasing a new book. It's about the power of reciprocity, called The Caretaker.
Yeah.
I definitely want to hear about that. Geoff, welcome back to London Real.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I loved it last time, and I'm grateful for the chance to talk about my stuff. Thank you, Brian.
No, I appreciate that. It's interesting to have you back. I still get stopped on the streets. I was stopped right on Old Street about a month ago by a guy who was talking about your episode. And a lot of people, they really seem to identify you in a very serious and dramatic way. It's almost always men, and we can probably get into this. And I think that because you tap into a lot of fears that I think we all have as men, the ones we grow up with. And I think there are anxieties about our physical self, about being intimidated or being dominated, about maybe trying to transcend that, and maybe also trying to fight some of these Western principles of what we're taught it is to be a man and to bottle your feelings up. And I think you've gone, so far on your journey from, a lot of these things, becoming a bouncer to confront those fears to where you're now writing plays and directing plays. Yeah. And so I was wondering if you could tell me why you think, men really have that connection with you when it comes to many of those things. And then if you could also tell me, or tell us a little bit about your background.
I think what we were talking about before the interview about congruence, I think that people sense when you are congruent. And when I say congruent, I don't mean perfect. I just mean aligned. So my thinking, my saying, and my doing are aligned. I'm not perfect. I fall over every day. And sometimes I'm embarrassed by the mistakes I make and my incongruities. But I align myself back very quickly to Logos. So I try to do everything from a place of...
That's a term you use, logos. Is it L-O-G-O-S?
L-O-G-O-S, yeah. It means purpose, or it means potential, or it means love. It means aligning to our best self.
Okay.
It means finding out who we are and then working from there all the time. But if we work from Logos and we work from love, it is the only place to work from. It's the most powerful place to work from. Then the exponential effect of that is infinite. It's amazing. It's very, you said to me we had a little chat at the beginning. You said very difficult balance to keep. It's a very tricky balance. For me to stay in Logos, I have to wake up with it. I have to talk to my Logos all day, and I have to go to bed with it at night. So I meditate very, very consistently. I read a lot of stuff that challenges me, a lot of spiritual stuff and religious stuff, but in the sense of religious, in the sense of aligned work, powerful work, not in the sense of dogma, but in the sense of stuff that challenges my very reality. Stuff, very, very difficult stuff to read.
And a good example of getting out of Logos would be like if you just have a flash of anger, or if you're waiting in the line and you're just completely out of the moment, or you're doing something for the wrong reason, for lust or for greed. Is that
you fall into mind.
Okay.
Most people work between what Freud would call the ego and the superego, between the voice at the front and their kind of general cognition, their normal kind of internal parent. The people that are powerful in the world bypass the mind and they work straight from Logos, and then they work through the mind. So everything is processed through cognition or through perception or through, through the mind, but they're working from a pure place. So the CEO, the divine sat-nav is pushing the information through the mind. And in order for us to be able to do that consistently, we have to expand the mind. We have to challenge core beliefs. We have to change perceptions. When we change perceptions, we change reality, literally. So it's very exciting because it basically says, you create the reality that's in front of you. You create the reality that's all around you with your perception, and perception can be changed. So once we have the alignment, so we have the CEO, which is the authentic voice, the authentic self, and then we have like a sentinel ego, our best voice at the front saying, like a manager, and then we have our mind body, which is just the software, that we work through, and then we have the physical and sensual body. When they all work together, we have absolution. We have an absolute person, and then you are hugely powerful in the world. Then we trigger into synchronicity, serendipity, and the things we need in the world appear mysteriously and miraculously.
What's an example of, say I woke up in the morning and say I was a fighter and I've got a fight in 6 weeks and I want to get that UFC belt, or I work in the city and I want to make as much money as possible. Is that a good example of not being with your logos? Should you think, wait a second, what is going to make me whole as a person, or what do I love in this world, or what's a good example, like a real world example of being in touch with your logos?
For me, being in touch with my logos is doing what I'm doing now, which is I'm a teacher. I talk, I communicate, I use my words. I think in Hermetics they call it heka, the word heka, which means words of power. They say that reality is created when we command it with our words. So words have real power, which we see people talk themselves into illness with words. We see people talk themselves into health with words. We see people create realities with words. We see people destroy realities with words. We see people create great businesses and relationships with words, and then we see them destroy it with the opposite kind of words. So it's about, first of all, it's about knowing who you are. Once you know who you are, you'll know what your purpose is. Purpose comes back to love again. It means we're working from love. And for me, that's about teaching. And I do that through writing, I do it through talking, I do it through mentoring. And it's not been comfortable for me because, writing has been more difficult for me than standing on a nightclub door with people threatening to kill me. And mentoring has been very difficult for me because I often go to mentoring with people and think, who the fuck am I to tell you what to do?
Right.
Because my old scripts click in.
Plus you can affect change in yourself, but it's difficult to affect change in others.
Once you're aligned, if you're working from logos, you're working from a frequency of love. I'm not talking about an emotion, I'm talking about truth. When you're talking from a place of truth, you can transform people's lives. You can heal people. You can inspire them. You can give them aspiration. You can get on the Skype with somebody and talk to somebody in Australia and literally exorcise them of their demons or their divides or their false thoughts. If you have a platform and you have enough control over your infrastructure, over your 5 bodies, and you're able to deliver from Logos, you can heal people across the continent. No doubt, I've done it. And in the early days, when I was ignorant and violent, I damaged so many people with what I said and what I did.
Can you talk about those early days just to kind of get everyone up to speed? I know you in a few minutes, and just kind of give us kind of the evolution view for people that don't know much about Geoff Thompson.
Yeah, well, till the age of 32, I was working in factories sweeping floors because I was terrified of my potential. I knew there was more out there. What Mohammed said, it was within my reach, but it's beyond my grasp. I could see potential, but every time in myself, in the world, yeah, I could see that I could do anything I wanted to do, but every time I tried to do it, every time I reached the periphery of my comfort zone or my conscious net or my social structure, I felt tremendous fear, terror.
Anxiety?
Anxiety, terror, depression. So I was terrified because I realised, for instance, I wanted to be a full-time martial artist. I was a second dan. But every time I went to try and do that, this voice would come in and just say, who do you think you are? Okay. That's not for the likes of you. It's a silly idea. Don't get above your station. You've got a job. Jobs like this don't grow on trees. And that would be an internal monologue, a sub-vocalization, but it would also be mirrored by all of the people around me who attacked what they would call pretension. So it wasn't about changing jobs. It was literally about changing realities. That's what we do when we step outside of the social mores. We change reality. I mean, I've done it several times.
Right, because you transformed from that to becoming the bouncer, to becoming the writer, and now
martial artist.
Right.
I ended up on the world stage with martial arts. I ended up in Las Vegas, teaching for Chuck Norris, sitting with Chuck Norris, having a cup of tea, talking about when he used to spar with Bruce Lee. It was mad.
So how did you break through?
I broke through by, it's a really good question.
This is before the internet and all the self-help gurus, or even things that you can find out now. There probably wasn't any blogs about meditation when you did this.
Yeah, good point. But when you've got essence, when you've got truth, it travels. When you have essence, when you've got truth, you talk to 7.5 billion people without even moving from your front room.
So where did your truth come from?
My truth came from challenging all the old scripts. As all my fears rose up, I'll tell you what happened. I went through a very bad depression. I kept wanting to write stuff, but every time I wrote stuff, this sub-vocalization would batter me, and the people around me would batter me. My first wife ripped up my first plane, threw it in the bin, said it's rubbish. And it was, people were massively threatened by my aspiration, by my ambition.
It's amazing how uncomfortable other people get when you change.
Hugely.
It's fascinating to watch.
Well, that's why people don't change perception, Brian. They don't change. If this is true, which it is, I have no doubt, because I've got proof. If it's true, why don't more people do it? I know you said to me something about Tim Ferriss. He said most people probably won't do this stuff. And they won't do it because change. Well, even though change is the only constant, it's the one thing that everyone's afraid of. If I change, if I just stop drinking alcohol, I'll probably lose most of my social circle. And most people in my life will think I'm odd, which they did when I gave up alcohol 15 years ago. People thought I was odd. They thought I was up my own arse. They thought I was a tree hugger. When I started talking about God, or about logos, or about potential with a capital P, people suddenly thought I'd taken a soft option. It was actually the most difficult thing I've ever done. People like Muhammad, people like Arjuna, people like Christ, people like Sister Teresa of Avila, all of the, Francis, all of our great prophets were tremendously challenged by accessing their logos, or by accessing their greatest potential, by connecting what the Hindus call the Atman to the Brahman, connecting ourself to our fullest potential.
You talk about change really quick. When I left the city 3 years ago and walked away from a job in the city after 9 years, and I remember all of my old colleagues and clients, they would call me up after a couple months, and they were like, "What are you doing, Brian? Like, are you sure you know what you're doing?" And I would get these calls, and after about 4 or 5 months, I was like, "Wait a second, I'm the one that's got no income. Like, I'm the one that should be freaking out." But like, people were really bothered, and they kept asking me, like, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I was just like, "Why are you stressed about it? It's my life."
Yeah.
And first time I really observed it, Geoff, is how much my change made everyone else uncomfortable.
Massively, yeah.
And maybe it wasn't even like I was not drinking, but maybe everyone else was seeing in me what they could do.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I wasn't necessarily making a better path, but I was making a different path.
They're seeing their potential. The question you was asking me earlier on is, if you're a UFC fighter or if you're a businessman, it doesn't really matter what you are, because everything is just based on perception. It's whether where you are is where you love. What I've realised from my own exploration, and it came from this depression and deciding to write down all of the things I was afraid of and confront them one by one, I eventually found out what free will was. I used to think free will was the ability to be able to make yourself do the things you're afraid to do and not do the things which are detrimental to you. That's a level of free will. But actually, the only real free will is if you can work from love. In other words, if I'm writing, I love writing. That's my logos. When I do that, I connect to bliss. But that's not to say that it's easy, but I love it. I love the process of it. I experience the dissolution of separation when I write, when I teach, when I mentor. So, everyone talks about separation. Everyone thinks separation is real, but separation is an illusion. Nothing's separate. Everything is connected by energy, but we place emotions between us and other people. And when we connect to our bliss, there is a dissolution of that separation, and we feel the connection with everything. So the only way we can access and exercise free will is to work from love. But we can only work from love if we know who we are. Because most of the time, most people are working, I think 95% of our perceptions are unconscious. So most of the time, people are working unconsciously.
Your self-dialogue with yourself, or just everything?
Your beliefs, your perceptions. You
don't even know that you're thinking them.
95%, 50% we're born with, and 50% we're taught between the ages of 1 and 6, which is when the internal parent is developed.
50% we're born with as humans, with instincts and...
We inherit most of our perceptions through our genes, through our parents. Yeah,
I've never heard that theory.
Yeah. It's so, but you see it around you. I mean, that's what the current science is saying, that that our cells are led by perception, which is powerful. But but it's saying that 95% of those perceptions are unconscious and they're never challenged.
Right.
Like people have lots of issues with lots of different things, but they never challenge those issues.
And they couldn't tell you what their issues are because they're subconscious.
No, because no one ever challenges it. Everyone just sits and watches the news, and everyone just agrees that it's, you know, there's a kind of complicit agreement with everything. Like a big thing, for instance, is money. People have a perception of money, that it's good or that it's bad or that it's dirty lucre or whatever it is, but money actually doesn't physically exist. But people don't challenge that perception. Money is an exchange of energy with a perceived value. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's just perceived value.
Yeah, so it's so it doesn't actually physically exist, but people are prepared to, you know, to die for their belief in what money is. Or to, you know, when we talk about religion, when we talk about dogma, people don't actually challenge what they hear. They might hear something about Islam and they think fundamentals or fundamentalists, but when you read the Quran or when you read Muhammad's life story, that's not what you see. You see a hugely courageous man, you see a system that's developing, you see the same message in the Quran as you see in the Bhagavad Gita, as in the Torah, as in the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Tao Te Ching, you know, the Guru Granth Sahib, you know, the Mahabharata, they all say exactly the same thing. You have problems. These are the problems. These problems are perceptions. When you connect to Logos, those perceptions can be changed.
So you're saying you have to know yourself first, and a lot of your perceptions about yourself and the world are unconscious. So how do you know yourself before we get to the Logos?
It's a great question. And then what I've found is the best way to know yourself is the best way to find out who you are is, first of all, to trace who you're not. I know if I go down the list of the 7 deadly sins, I know I'm not jealous. That's not who I truly am, because jealousy is fear. So it has no existence, really. It's a perception. I know I'm not envious, which is fear. I know I'm not violent. I know I'm not aggressive. I know I'm not greedy. I know I'm not judgmental. I'm none of those things. So when any of the fear signals rise up in me, I automatically know it's false. So if I experience a jealous identity, I know that's not who I am. It's not how I want to live in the world. If I experience a violent or an aggressive tendency, I know that's not me as well. That's not how I want to live. That's kind of it's a frequency of sediment. It's a low frequency. It works. It's a form of communication. People live in that place, and I've lived in that place.
This is fear.
Fear,
right?
Yeah, or any of the aggressions, you know, any of the jealousy, the anger, the rage, the greed.
Is this something you should take an inventory of yourself through the 7 deadly sins?
Massive,
and find out what you are and what you aren't?
A brutal inventory of yourself.
And what should you use the 7 deadly sins?
Well, that's a good way to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
what is it?
Logos. Oh yeah.
The sins. I don't even know them.
Yeah, it's things like jealousy, envy, greed, sloth.
Sloth. Yeah. Right.
So if you have a look at those and if you can identify those in you, or if you just look at the television, if something comes on about fundamentalists and you feel a rage, then it's a mirror that something in you is still fundamental. But certainly is with me.
Okay.
When I was angry at greedy bankers, when I was angry at corrupt politicians, when I was angry at fundamentalists, I recognised definitely, unequivocally, there were still bits of me that were greedy. I knew that I could feel it, and greed is fear. When I looked at the fundamentalists, I thought there's parts of me that are still have fundamentalist elements. I know that. I don't like to admit it. It's not comfortable, but I know it's definitely there.
Okay.
And corruption, you only have to fiddle your tax or download something illegal from the internet, and you're a liar and a cheat.
But you can also not be corrupt and still be angered by corruption, or you can think corruption should be, prosecuted or dealt with.
You can still have your day in court. I think those things are important, but the main thing is, every time I went out into the world to try and correct corrupt people, I bumped into my own corruption.
Okay, understood.
So the key is when you are aligned, you think, well, I'll get myself aligned first. I'll get rid of all these elements in me. When I've got rid of them in me, you suddenly look at the world and think, well, there's not really much need for me to challenge this with anybody else. Just me aligning myself will have an exponential effect on everybody.
Sure. There's an expression that I've been saying a lot lately is if the only tool you have is a hammer, then everything starts looking like a nail.
Yeah.
And you see it with guys that go out and they'll say, they'll go out to find women and they're like, oh, all the women in this city, all they want is money. And it's like, well, that's because you're projecting that on them. And so I think exactly what you're saying.
Exactly
if you're projecting all your insecurities on the world, I guess they come right back at you.
The biggest thing I learned was that if you imagine you're at the cinema You've got the light coming through the projector, hits the film, and it goes onto the screen. If you was at the cinema and the film started to spin or come off centre, you wouldn't go to the screen and try and alter it. You'd go back because you know the problem's at the level of the film.
Okay.
If you're sitting with a horror film, you won't complain that it's a horror film because you've gone in and paid for it. Well, that's how we are. We have massive access, infinite access to light, the ability to create. It comes through the film of our cognition and it projects onto a thin screen of reality. If we want to change reality, we can't change reality at the level of reality. We can't change the world at the level of the world. We change it at the level of cognition, at the level of perception.
Okay.
And when we change ourselves, the world does change. And again, I've got proof of that because I've gone from, sweeping floors in factories and being angry and blaming the world to actually living with free will, because everything I do comes from a place of love.
So once you recognize those things in yourself, now how do you kind of go to work on that?
Then it's what in Islam they call the internal jihad. It's, they say the external battle is quite easy by comparison.
Okay.
So it's about going in and observing so what we do is if a trait rises up, once we recognise I don't want jealousy in my life, I don't want anger, I don't want judgment, when that feeling rises up in me, I observe it without engaging it.
Okay.
I observe it without identifying with it. I just observe it. And if I just observe it without engaging it or identifying with it, it will dissipate. The nature of the fear will be liberated, and the effulgence that's left, the energy will come over to me, and my conscious net will expand. So we basically just do it through observation. In esotericism, they call it feeding the bear. If these rages rise up and we engage and identify with them and rationalise them, then we feed the bear. And so the egoic body or the sensual body becomes more muscular. If we're able to observe it without identification and without if we're able to observe it without engagement and without identification, the bear feeds us. So in other words, we actually feed off vices. So if vices come up and we're not tempted by them and we're able to succumb them, they can become a tempering tool.
Sure, and we've seen that. Like if you do avoid some bad behavior, you become empowered by not doing
And it's a literal thing. I mean, in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is for anybody that hasn't read it, it's basically the fruits of the Vedas, right about 6,000 years old. In the 10th canto, it's about the birth of Krishna. It's basically 4 books that are talking about the birth of consciousness, about the birth of awareness. It says that when consciousness is born, it will be attacked from every angle by every demon. And when they use the word demon, it means, I think it's Old Greek or Latin, it means divide. A divided self or a divided thought or a divided belief. So it's saying that when consciousness is born, it will be attacked internally and externally on all corners. But if we're able to recognise that we've got consciousness and we're able to anticipate these attacks, we will be able to feed off the egoic projections that come towards us. So our consciousness will grow just by facing them. So with Krishna, the story was used with Krishna. When he was born, King Kamsa believed his reign as king was going to be lost. He represents the ego, or the Satan. So he sent 12 demons to kill Krishna. But of course, every time they came to him, it was like a fly going into a huge fire. It just dissipated. Any kind of egoic projection can't exist in the light of consciousness. It will just dissolve. It'd be like walking into the whole universe. But the interesting point he made was that when Krishna, the baby, killed the demon, the nature of the demon was liberated, and the effulgence that was locked into the demon expanded him. So it's basically saying when we confront our fears, on a fundamental level, when we confront our fears and we're able to see them as unreal, the nature of the fear will be liberated, and the effulgence that's locked in that place will come over to us, and we will become more spiritually muscular.
Right. No, I understand what you mean. What do you say when you see the world the way it is, say today? And I look at this sometimes, and you see the kind of the Twitter world and the constant online media, where we can almost forget about our own consciousness and absorb the consciousness of the world, much more so than even when there used to be television on all the time, or football matches. Or it seems like now with everyone becoming a broadcaster and becoming a consumer on so many levels, 24 hours a day. Do you think it's harder now to try to observe your own behavior and observe your own consciousness than it ever was?
I've never heard that question. It's a great question. And you're right. We get so caught up in the world we believe it's real.
And it's a great way to escape.
It's an easy way to escape. I always say that confusion's a great hiding place and blame is a great hiding place.
Right.
It's a really delicious projection. It's much easier for me to concern myself with fundamentalists or with greedy bankers than it is to look at my own life.
Right.
Nearly everybody I know that attacks greed and anger and fundamentalism is greedy and angry and fundamental. And I know because I was myself.
Right.
I was a hugely violent man, and I was violent because I was massively insecure. There's no violence in my life.
Talk about that violence and how it started with you and how you were able to identify it.
I became a nightclub doorman. I basically had this massive depression, and I decided that I can't live under the dominion of this anymore. So I wrote a pyramid on a piece of paper, and
This
I
is
wrote
your
down
fear pyramid.
my fear pyramid.
You're famous for this. This is your creation.
Yeah,
right?
it's my creation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you explain it really quick? Because I think it's
I basically
powerful.
just drew a pyramid on a piece of paper.
Okay.
With steps, and on each step of the pyramid, I wrote down a fear. Least fear at the bottom,
Right.
worst fear at the top. Then I basically just confronted those fears one by one until I'd overcome them. I got
Can you give us an example
desensitisation.
of what some of those might
The
have been?
bottom one was a fear of spiders.
Okay.
So it might not seem like much, but if there was a spider in my bedroom, I wouldn't sleep.
Okay, yeah.
So I found the spider, and I picked a spider up, and I kept picking it up until I became completely desensitised. I didn't realise at the time, but it was a shamanic technique. I was actually collecting power from trauma. I was finding traumatic situations and collecting power.
By confronting it.
By confronting it,
Okay.
and by proving that fear is an illusion. Fear is actually an illusion, but if we feed it, it creates 3 dimensions. It creates a 3-dimensional world.
The bear again. in
The
a
bear
way.
again, we're feeding the bear. So are we feeding the bear, or is the bear feeding us? So I went out and confronted all these fears. And
What were some of the other layers? Did
So
it
I
get
had
really
the
big?
dentists. I hadn't been to the dentist for about 5 years. I had a childhood terror of dentists. I went and sat in the dentist, got rid of that in one go. I've never had even an inkling since. I was a karate guy, and I had a tremendous fear of competitions. So I started to go into all the big, tough competitions at the time, like in Shotokan and like the Liverpool Open. And I think one day I went into one competition. I wasn't a very good competition fighter, but I had 7 fights in one day and became completely desensitized just in one day.
Wow.
I had the ultimate fear was this fear of confrontation. So I became a nightclub doorman. I had a fear of leaving the factory as well. I was working terrible shifts in the factory. I left that and got a job on a building site, just normal hours.
When you say confrontation, I'm guessing you're meaning kind of a non-dojo confrontation.
Yeah, violent confrontation.
Because a controlled martial arts confrontation is probably something that you can be periodized, maybe easier than that random confrontation. I know martial artists that probably still fear, a knife pulled them or on a confrontation on the street.
Most people don't prepare themselves for a real conflict. They prepare themselves in a room where there's rules.
So I was watching one of your videos you made many years ago, I think last week, and it was one of your basic street fighting methods and also the mentality. Which
like Animal Day, something like that.
Yeah, and it was fascinating the way you talked about it because, I've been training, Thai boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for many, many years. And in a controlled environment, I have a certain way of reacting. But I'm not expecting a groin kick, and I'm not expecting what you said, which is somebody's mate punching me in the head while I'm on the ground with someone else. Or you made a great observation. Someone walking down the streets might kick you in the head.
Happens all the time.
Even if you're mounted on someone else. And so I could just see everything I learned in martial arts would actually probably hurt me in a street fight. Give me a false sense of confidence. I would think, I've got him down on the ground in a choke. I'm winning. When in fact I wasn't. But I wonder if you could just talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, well, it's, again, that was me. I've kind of got all of these fears, and one of them is that I'm a second dan in karate at the time, but I'm still afraid of confrontation. And when I talk to my teachers, they try and encourage me to to solve that in the dojo, but the dojo is too controlled. Even when it's hugely physical, it's still controlled. They didn't talk about the pre-fight, the in-fight, the post-fight, the adrenal dump.
Yeah.
They didn't talk about the fact that someone's going to stand in front of me and say, I don't give a fuck that you're a black belt, because I'm going to find out where you live. I'm going to come around your house when you're having tea with your mum. I'm going to bite your nose off and spit it down your fucking throat. So I don't give a fuck about your second dan. And that terror of this guy not caring, he might not be able to fight the tide in the bath, but that immediate confrontation of posturing, it triggers the flight instinct in us. And the flight instinct is so powerful that I've watched legends run away from fights and bottle it in real fights.
Because that's the opposite of the spirit of a martial arts dojo. I mean, a martial arts dojo is all about respect. No
Respect.
one would have said a tenth of that in a martial arts dojo.
No.
So in a way, it doesn't really prepare you for the street, does
So
it?
we prepared people by dealing with the most difficult thing, which was posturing and the reality of a real situation, which is close range. Maybe you've got 18 inches because all situations are very close and they start very close. Preemption is the only constant. It's the only constant. It's the only thing that works all the time.
Which is to preempt the fight by
just
posturing.
to hit first.
Oh, hit first. Okay,
just to hit first. Yeah, hit first, and use artifice. You know, even Masashi only had 3 preemptions. He didn't have any concept of blocking and countering, trapping and countering, because he knew that wouldn't work in a real situation because the situation was too close and too volatile. So we said you initiated it by using deception and then hitting first or striking first. So his 3 preemptions were hit them before they think of hitting you, hit them as they think of hitting you, hit them when they twitch. And I've done all 3, and I've been through hundreds of fights doing that. And it's the only thing that works consistently. Of course, I'm a big grappling fan. I did full-time judo with Neil Adams for a long time.
Chuck Norris was quite a Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
He's a really good Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy.
Yeah, people didn't know that about him.
But the worst thing you could do in a real fight is go to the floor because, like I say, even strangers come round, and I've seen people literally jump on other people's heads. They're not even involved. You know, you're on top of somebody, you're on the mount. Someone walking past from the chip shop just presumes that you're the bully because you're on top, and you get your jaw broke or you get hoofed in the head, and then loads of other people join in, or you get stabbed. I've seen loads of people stabbed by the girlfriends, by the mothers, I remember getting into a situation with a guy once. It was a match fight outside a factory.
Which is a prearranged fight.
A prearranged one-on-one.
And
4 guys, 4 neighbours came running out from the house, and because I was dominating this guy, it did end up on the floor. You're a bit safer with a one-on-one, but even this, I ended up on the floor because I made a mistake. These people come out, one of them had a screwdriver, was going to stab me, just neighbours of this factory, because they thought I was the bully. It was just actually an arranged match fight. So going to the floor is in a match fight or in a pre-arranged fight. Obviously, we know the grapplers always win, but when you start to include like a penknife or a sharp pencil, or you include biting, or you include other people, so other people might get involved, it becomes a very dangerous place to be. So we were in thousands and thousands of violent situations, and no one ever went to the floor. No one kicked. It was just very close range, preemption with artifice.
Is part of the preemption being vocal and projecting a real dominant thing? I saw a little bit of that.
Depending, yeah, that's the posturing. So if you didn't want to be physical and you wanted to solve the situation without being physical, you would posture.
Okay.
So you would create a gap by striking them, by pushing them back, create a gap. You would posture, you'd make yourself very big, you'd balloon back and forward, you'd salivate, you'd swear, you'd come into monosyllables. And the main thing is that you're creating a gap. When you create a gap, it triggers the flight instinct, and very few people will come forward if you create that gap. And again, we're talking about a situation that might last a few seconds. We're not talking about a situation that's going to happen over an hour. You trigger the adrenaline so hard in them that all of their instinct just wants to run away. And like I said, even really experienced people get caught by that. So you start to learn how to use adrenaline. You control it in yourself and you use it in other people, and you just work on the stuff that works every single time, which is preemption, hitting first. So on the one level, I learned by going into a pressured environment that the thing that works consistently is preemption. That was the fundamental thing I learned about martial arts. I went on with 10,000 techniques. They fell away under pressure, and I was left with just 1 or 2 things that work consistently, which is what Masashi says. There are not many ways to kill a man.
Right. This is the famous Japanese sword fighter who wrote a book after he
wrote the Book of 5 Rings.
Right. All the techniques of.
But he said that people build systems around essence because systems sell. He says, but this isn't about selling. This is about life and death. So on a fundamental level, I learnt this works. At first,
Did you perfect this on the door, or is this by observing people on the
you
door?
you can only perfect it by doing it. You know, you can't perfect. You can understand it intellectually outside of the arena, but the only way you can perfect it is by being in the arena. Because there is a whole other issue coming in with confrontation. It's not just about me fighting somebody or even me winning. It's about the fact that when I fight that person, there's a karmic trail, maybe police involvement, and maybe an enemy for life, maybe he's connected. It never ends on the night. I've had people confront me 20 years after a fight, and to them it was yesterday, and they're hugely violent individuals. So when you took on a confrontation, you didn't take on a one-on-one fight there and then. You took on an enemy for life, someone that might want to come and burn your mum's house down, somebody that might, you know, ring you up in at 4 a.m. and say, "I'm going to shoot your children." So there were so many contributing factors. The fighting part of it was absolutely the smallest part.
Okay.
That was the easiest part. It was coping with the hardiness of conflict. So on the one level, I learnt all of that. On the bigger level, the metaphysical level, I recognised that I'd created all those violent situations from a very powerful imagination, from a very powerful perception that was projected through an uncontrolled imagination. So I created thousands of violent situations in my life. I couldn't even go out in the car without getting into a fight. I was in fights all the time.
All right. Because you were inherently fearful.
Because it was in me.
You projected it on
wherever
everything.
I went, yeah.
So road rage,
everything.
this, fuck that
And I
guy,
said to my
fuck
wife,
that guy.
isn't Coventry violent? Everywhere I go, there's a fight. And she said, there's a common denominator, Geoff. It's everywhere you go. But I was inspired by that. Because I thought, crikey. What I'd done is I'd fully surrendered myself to the fact that the world was dangerous and I needed to protect myself. So I think I've said this before, but I got all the war paint and I got all the muscles and all the skills and all the kind of, I could kill in 60 languages. And I went out and I created these situations. Everything I read about was violent. My conversations were violent. What I wrote about was violent. All my relationships were violent.
So how did you evolve from there to the man I'm talking to today?
By recognising that I'd worked to shamanic law. When you surrender to something, you become it. If you surrender to potential, you become potential. If you fully immerse yourself into being a judo player, I fully immersed myself full time into judo. I had 5 judo suits, and I was working with Olympic players every single day, and you get really, really good very quickly. I mean, I know this is what Tim Ferriss talks about a lot. So I'd fully immerse myself into violence because my belief was that was what I needed. When I realised that I'd created it with my belief, I knew I could change that belief. So I changed the books. I stopped reading violent books. I started to read inspirational books, motivational books, philosophical books, religious books. I started to read books that really challenged me. I had weapons in every room of my house. I got rid of all the weapons.
Okay.
I literally changed my perception from the from outwards to inwards. I got rid of all the stuff, all the accoutrements, and then I started, as anger and ego and fear and rage rose up in me, instead of looking at it and trying to challenge and trying to change it at the level of the emotion, I traced the emotion back.
What was the other
found
path?
the root.
What was the other path? You must have had men that mimicked you on the door in the beliefs and feelings and aggression and anger. I mean, is that even sustainable, or could it have gone another way? What happens? Do people get injured? Do they go to prison, or do people evolve out of it in other ways?
Lots of the guys that I work with, there's 2 of them one of them's doing 2 life sentences at the moment. It's took 20 years for them to catch him, but he's just got 2 25-year sentences. Another friend of mine he's in his 50s now, and he's just got 28 years. Some of them became psychotic and became insane. Some of them got killed. 4 of them were murdered. I had 2 of my friends were killed in fights, and 2 of them were assassinated in their cars.
So this could have been you.
It would have been me, yeah.
Okay.
Because I was very violent. But what I did was I inquired. I looked into that and I thought, why do I feel the need to be physical? Every time I was physical and I solved a situation, the bigger situation would come.
And you probably didn't feel satisfied after that.
I never felt satisfied. I never felt the fear didn't go away. That was the big thing.
That's interesting.
That
must have made you think more than anything.
I got more violent and I got more capable, and the fear never went away. One of the big things I did was I went very, very heavily into the training. I really inquired into the training. I did full-on animal day, and I went heavily into the grappling, which gave me a massive amount of confidence. And I
That
just
can also be
started
therapeutic in a way, though, because I mean,
Yeah.
men need to get aggression out, and you see many martial artists that are very zen and very calm.
Yeah. Well, it went from being violent, because I still teach martial arts now, and I still hit the pads. And people say, how come you're still doing that? I say, because I'm not doing it the same anymore. When I do it now, there's a rhythm to it. It's massage, it's cleansing, it's internal washing through physical repetition. It's beautiful. If you do a chikomi with a judo, or if you do, I watch, you guys on the bag getting the rhythm with the Thai or with the BJJ, there is a real bliss to that. So my training now is not in any way about violence. That's the smallest part of my game. It's just about cleansing through ritual. I think Ushiba called it masoji. So it's the physical, psychological and spiritual cleansing through physical repetition. And we also create a template. If I can find pure function in a punch by going from A to B, so if I can move a punch 12 inches and find pure function in that punch, that can be the template for my health, can be the template for my business, can be the template for my body, for my relationships, can be the template for everything I do. That's why I teach martial arts, and I say to people, if you can master one thing, you can master all things, because the template is the same. So I teach people to master their lives through the mastering of a single punch.
Okay.
It's very beautiful.
Can you walk us through just the rest of the evolution, just to finish out the story? So you found yourself going away from these violent tendencies. You got all this violent energy out of your life. And then what happened? Did that change your writing? Did that change your...
Yeah. Well, I did my fear pyramid. Obviously, the top of the pyramid was a fear of violent confrontation.
Okay. I'm curious about the fear pyramid. When you take one layer out, does the whole thing shift down, and do you get another one on top?
It's a very interesting concept, because people and things start adding themselves. It's like an exodus. When your shadows know that you're cleansing, they start coming up. They start rising at some level. These old scripts know that they can find salvation through you. It's like a proper exodus. So loads of things started adding themselves to my pyramid.
More fears.
That
you didn't know were
subtle
there.
fears that were hiding underneath the superfluous surface fears.
Fear of being successful, or fear of being this, or fear of loving someone, or
fear of abandonment. Ultimately, for me, I mean, I traced it right back to a fear of abandonment, and it wasn't just abandonment by people. When I read The Interior Castle, about the epiphany of Sister Teresa of Avila, she said our greatest fear is that we're going to be abandoned by our source. And that's what I felt.
By our source.
By our source, by God.
Okay.
That we're going to be disconnected from our very source, from God himself. And that's what, when I traced all my stuff back, it was an existential fear, a fear of, actually being disconnected from everything. But when I traced it back and I examined it and I inquired into it, deep internal inquiry, I recognised abandonment isn't possible. It's not possible any more than a fish can be abandoned by water.
Okay, so that's how you kind of double that. Do you still have a fear pyramid?
I've still got a kind of an invisible pyramid, because there's still things I'm working on, and it's mostly to do with old scripts, because I'm not just processing my own stuff. I'm processing, obviously 50% of my perceptions are inherited, so I'm processing stuff for my ancestors. Which sounds weird, but I'm processing stuff that I don't even know where it's come from.
It does sound weird, and it's an interesting concept,
But it's but when you look at the shamanic stuff, or if you look into Christian mysticism or Hermetics, and into any of the systems, when they go into the kind of deep cleansing, they all have systems for this.
So it's like a collective conscious that's kind of been inherited over the years, and that you got it as well.
I'm literally studying now. I'm like a vampire. I'm thousands of years old. There are cells and perceptions in me that are thousands of years old. They're not going to go in one fell swoop. But as I cleanse these old perceptions, as they come up, if I've got the courage to observe and identify them, to observe without identification as they rise up, I can cleanse them. And not just that they're cleansed, the effulgence or the treasure that's in those dark cells as it comes up expands my conscious net. So then I'm going to be careful, because I'll start going weird, but then
go wherever you want to go.
Then you're sitting in Leicester Square and you're looking up at the sun, and it's not the sun. The sun is not the sun. You recognise at some level that that's in you. Everything is in you. It's all in us. It's so amazing. It's so, and I have flashes of that, and then I try to articulate it, and it feels clumsy. But I have this feeling that it's all of it's us. In Christian theology, they call it realised eschatology. They're saying it's already yours. Everything is yours. You've just got to collect it. But to collect it, you've got to go beyond perception. And to go beyond perception, you have to go to war with perception, which is what the Bhagavad Gita is about. One of the greatest books ever written. It's just about Arjuna, the prince of the world, having to go through the sea of nescience, the battle of Guru, etc., to win his kingdom. And Krishna, who represents his consciousness, is saying, don't worry, it's already unfolded, they're already dead. You just have to do your duty.
You talk about perceptionism, you talk about shamanism. What is your stance on psychedelics, since these all combine on these cases? On this show,
It's like psychedelic drugs and stuff.
Yeah, we've talked about ayahuasca, we've talked about DMT on the show, and it's one of the first things that showed me that everything I'm observing is nothing more than a chemical reaction at some point, and I can only trust these things only so much. So you must have an opinion on these things.
My opinion is that the psychedelics will connect you to other dimensions, but they don't leave you with the tools to work with those other dimensions. It'd be a bit like me giving you my London Marathon medal and saying, put that round your neck. And you've got a bit of bliss for a moment because you've got a medal, but secretly you know you haven't done the journey or built the infrastructure to be a London Marathon runner. So I think it's good to see it and to get a view of it and to get this idea that we're all ants pretending that there's nothing else out there. You know, 2 ants in a garden over a bit of sugar, and one of the ants saying, if there was anything else out there, I would know, believe me. You know how people do.
Yeah.
But there's so much out there. So I think it gives you a vision of it and lets you see it, but
But it's not a solution.
No, it's not the solution because it doesn't give you the tools to work with it. And I also think it can be very dangerous because if we expanded our perceptions too quickly, it'd be like putting 1,000 volts through a 100-watt bulb. We would have a psychotic breakdown. I know I've had stuff sometimes a little bit too soon, and I've wobbled. I once wobbled for nearly 2 years because I was aware of what I was and who I was and what I could create and the potential, and I ran away from it. I had cognitive dissonance.
Just from a realization.
Just from a realization, yeah. So, so I think there's a danger in seeing stuff you're not ready to see.
Yeah.
I don't mean in an arrogant way. I just mean if you really want to see it, get control of the mind, the physical and sensual body. Get control of all this, because if we've got 10 personalities in us and we suddenly get access to a massive amount of energy, which one of those personalities is going to take hold of that? Who's going to be the captain? If it's one of my old egoic, violent personalities, people are going to get massively damaged when I get access to that energy, because that energy's got to come through my cognition. And if my cognition is damaged or faulty, my projection of the world is going to represent that. But as a nightclub doorman, I was accessing a massive amount of energy, and I was destroying people with it. I was literally kicking the teeth out of their head. I was just little spills of essence were destroying people and destroying me.
Right, yeah, because you get all that karma, not only with them, but within yourself.
Within yourself, yeah, 100 billion cells. If I deliver violence to you, I have to process it in 100 billion cells. So 100 billion cells are processing violence in order to give it to you. So it's hugely caustic to me.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. And when you describe violence the way you do, it would be interesting to see how many people would at least think about their own violence, if not holding it back. But let me just finish up with the psychedelics. It's kind of been part of our journey here at London Real, because about 6 months in, Nick and I went on an ayahuasca experience, and I was terrified, and because no one likes to see their ego crushed. And I've kind of had a bunch of journeys, and I agree with you to a certain extent, is the fact that it's not a solution for your life, but in a lot of ways it's good for some people to see another reality.
I agree, yeah.
Because it's so hard to even comprehend, because you can get obviously so caught up in your own brain and your own egoism and your own consciousness, and it's sometimes nice to see something else. We had a guy in here talking about psilocybin, and he said a bad trip is learning at a rate you're not accustomed to.
Absolutely.
But I'm sure
I've had lots of bad trips.
Yeah, I'm sure you've had a lot of that.
This is basically what the book is about. The book is about a guy that wants the wealth without without the work.
Is this your new book?
Yeah, the caretaker.
Okay.
He wants the wealth without the work. He wants the medal without running
Doesn't
the race.
everyone?
Yeah, and this is kind of saying, if you can just slow down and be still and be quiet, and aim for love, aim to work from a frequency of love, which takes massive courage, massive insight, because you have to work from love. You have to consistently. You have to know who you are, and to know who you are, you've got to deal with all the parts of you that are uncomfortable, that you've built defense mechanisms around, that we don't want to look at.
So you have to be brave.
Hugely brave, massive. I mean, there was a great story about Muhammad when all the soldiers are coming back from war, and he's clapping them, and he's saying, "Well done on the small jihad." And some of them are like dismembered, some of them are dying, some of them have died, and they're very angry with Muhammad, and they're saying, "What are you on about, small jihad? Some of us are dying here. Some of us are dismembered. Some of us have died." And he just said, "That's the easy battle. The battle out there is easy. It's a distraction." He said, the only real battle is the battle with the ego. And for me, it's been very true. I mean, I have been in life and death situations as a nightclub doorman in a hugely violent city. And it was much easier. That was much easier than doing some of the stuff I do now. Some of the internal stuff I do now is much harder. And I can easily run away from it if I want to, because nobody would know, because it's a very personal, private development. But it's been, I mean, when I say difficult, I mean difficult to the point where some days I could weep with joy, and other days I really think I'm going to go insane. I feel like I'm going to go mad, because I have concepts and I see things and feel things. So when I say to people, I want to put my stuff out to billions of people to show them that, the reality is based on perception and that can be changed. Your potential is there. I want to do that because that feels as though it's my dharma. It feels as though it's my duty. I know it's the right thing to do because I'm scared of doing it. Because there's a big part of my past which says, "Who are you to do that?" Well, who am I not to do it? But so the fear is an old part of me saying, "You're not good enough to do that." And of course, in doing it, I will cleanse that and clean that, because I'll be in front of people and I won't go on my own, Brian. I'm not here today on my own. I wouldn't come here on my own. I wouldn't be arrogant enough to do that. You're a hugely discerning interviewer. That's why I love this program. So I bring a presence with me.
Which is what?
Well, I do a ritual, and I bring light. I bring guides. I bring love. I bring love here, so that if people are listening, hopefully they'll hear what they want to hear, which is what I said to you last time. I want kids that are waking up at 4 a.m, sweating with depression, to be able to access this and go, "I'm not the only person in the world, and there is hope. You can get beyond this." And I know I've got the proof. Wherever I go, if I'm talking to murderers in a prison, or damaged children, or nurses who've got no hope because of the job they're in, or if I'm talking to someone that's turning over $500 million but has got a cocaine addiction and 3 mistresses and he's in the 9th circle of the inferno, I'm doing the same thing. I don't know about their lives. I'm mentoring people at the moment. I'm mentoring a lot of CEOs in London. I don't know much about their life. All I know is that if I turn up and work from Logos, they will hear what they need to hear. So I bring that with me. That's part of my my preparation. And if I don't do the preparation, I end up coming from ego and then end up, tripping myself up, because it's coming from me, not through me.
Just quickly, when you go to mentor these guys, do you get a feeling of the energy and the essence of someone immediately when you meet them? I know this sounds do you know what's wrong right away?
Sometimes it jumps out. Sometimes I can tell. Sometimes people will write to me. I've been mentoring people for about 20 years. Sometimes, just unofficially, people write to me and I write back to them. And sometimes it's in their email and I'll just say, reread your email, the answers are already there. Sometimes in writing to you, they answer their own questions. Sometimes when you stand in front of them, because you're working from Logos, and you're using words of power, you're working from Heka, which means to raise God with your voice, or to raise potential, or to raise divinity. It's like an exorcism. It just jumps out of them, because you'll just go, "Oh, I see a divide there." You're in pain because you're divided against yourself.
What do you say to the guy with the coke habit and the 3 mistresses? Do you ask him questions like, "Why do you do that?" Or do you say, "You shouldn't do this"? Or how do you approach something like that?
Most people have rationalised what they do so often that no one's ever challenged it, especially if you're running a big company.
Yeah.
People don't challenge it because they don't.
Men like that insulate themselves with cars, with houses, with
Yeah.
trappings, with titles. So
And they orchestrate their life so that they don't have to see it.
yeah, unconsciously.
Yeah, unconsciously. It's the unconscious perception again. But I'll say to them, if we can observe this and identify this, if we can observe it without identifying with this, and just observe it and just sit in it, you can dissolve that and you'll be even more powerful because you'll just be working from love. And the exponential effect of love is everything you wanted anyway, all the toys. I mean, I've aimed for all the toys and it brought me no satisfaction. But although I love what Osho said, he said everybody should have a Rolls Royce because you can see God better from a Rolls Royce, which was great because he was basically saying once you sit in a Rolls Royce, you know that's not it. That isn't it. It should be, all of the material stuff should just be the exponential effect of you working from where you want to, where you know the love is, where you know whether that's as a writer or a UFC fighter or a sculptor. I see lots of people who are just in the wrong place because they're working from unconscious perception. But that's okay as well. Sometimes the road of excess, as Blake says, sometimes the road of excess will lead back to the palace of wisdom. Sometimes going down the wrong path takes you to the right path. Everything will lead home eventually. So if I work with people, I normally go into a church. There's a church on Piccadilly. I don't do much standing in front of flip charts. I just walk with people. I go around St James's Park. I stop for a coffee. I go up to BAFTA. I sit in elevated places because they expand you. And I just normally, I do about half an hour to 40 minutes meditation before I go. And my internal dialogue is, I don't know this person, please let him see you. Let him see his potential. Let him see it through me. Please let me keep out of the way. Let me just be a tabernacle for your essence, which is interesting because we're on Tabernacle Street. I thought that when I come down, it's a good sign. So, and then when I go and talk to them, just little subtle things will come out. And sometimes they don't come out until I may be with them for a couple of hours, and just as I'm about to leave, something will come out, and I'll go, that's it.
Okay, talk to me about writing. What makes a good writer, and what makes you a great writer?
I am a great writer because it doesn't come from me, it comes through me. It picks up my flavours, it picks up my stories, but it comes from somewhere else, so I can look at it objectively, like Fragile. This is the play I'm directing in Edinburgh, is beautiful. It's very harsh. We actually had to have the Samaritans at the door when we put it on in Coventry because it's so full of essence, so stark.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Fragile is about it's about me talking about when I was sexually abused as a boy. So if you imagine if you put an inner tube into water and you apply air pressure and the bubbles rise to the surface. Most people in life try to solve their problems at the level of the biggest bubble. So in my life, the biggest bubble was psychotic jealousy, insecurity, couldn't trust anybody.
Okay.
Women
and men.
Anybody, couldn't trust anybody, didn't trust myself. So when I tried to fix the problem at the level of the emotion, it didn't fix because obviously it didn't exist there. It was an illusion, it was Maya. When I traced that emotion back, through writing, through the cleansing, and through things like writing Fragile, I went to the source. And of course, the source was, at the age of 11 or 12, a man I idolised caught me in a hypnagogic state when I completely idolised this guy, didn't question...
Martial arts instructor, was he?
Martial arts instructor.
Okay.
He sexually abused me and implicitly said to me, nobody can be trusted, not even the people you love, especially the people you love. Then I told a parent who said, did you lead him on? And one of the lines in the play, which is really powerful, is the actor's talking to his imaginary mum, saying, "What do you mean to lead him on? I was 11. I was a fucking boy. I was 11." He's got cognitive dissonance. He doesn't understand. He's only ever kissed a girl. How would you lead somebody on? You idolise someone, they sexually abuse you. It's your fault. So writing the play enabled me to look at this person.
Is that an easy part to write?
Oh, man, no. So difficult.
Probably because, one, you're reliving it, and probably also you want to choose the perfect words to explain how you felt.
The key is not to try and use the words. Is I'll just let this write itself. Right. 40 years in the making. It writ itself in 2 sessions. And you know what? When it came on, it would only come on in Coventry. No one else would put it on. and I was terrified of it coming on Coventry in case my mum watched it, because I love my mum and I wouldn't want to hurt my mum for anything. So all of my meditation, all my prayer was, I'm going to put this on here, but I don't want my mum hurt, because this isn't about my mum. This is about me cleaning.
Right, but she was part of it. She was part of it.
She was a part of it.
Right.
So I had to uncover why she would do that and why I wasn't protected. Why didn't God protect me? You know, why did this person abandon me? Why I must be a piece of shit for him to do that? That was my belief. That's why I ended up becoming violent. That's why I ended up becoming insecure. That's why I ended up becoming massive. That's why I got rid of all the prettiness, cauliflower ears, broken nose, lots of tattoos. I got rid of all that little. I looked like a little girl when I was young. I got rid of all that, and it was all unconscious. When I traced it back through writing the play, I wrote about everything, not just what he did on the night, but how it left me damaged, and how my mind, in order to try and gain some control over what happened, my mind would go into fantasy, all sorts of weird and sick fantasy, to try and bring pleasure to the trauma, to bring some kind of balance back. Because I nearly went mad when I was young. I had a physical abandonment of myself. I think that in psychology, in Freudism, they call it abandonment of the child. But it really destabilised me as a boy. So writing the play enabled me to trace it right the way back to the leak in the inner tube. It was basically one damaged man who said that the world can't be trusted, and my mum, who was beautiful but was a working class girl who was terrified of middle class professionals and had cognitive dissonance and was terrified of shame and didn't know how to cope with it. So she said, "Did you lead him on?" In other words, was it your fault? There was nothing to forgive. It was so easy. I forgave him because he was just a damaged guy. And with my mum, honestly, after the play was on, I felt this expansion, I just felt this overwhelming love for my mum. And I still feel it now. So much love.
The play's been on for 2 years, because it really started in Belfast, right?
It was on in Coventry. It had a run in Coventry. Now it's going on in the old joint stock in Birmingham, and then it's going to Edinburgh for 3 weeks. Then it's going to Croydon for 2 nights, and it's going to Edinburgh for 3 weeks, and then hopefully we're going to bring it into London. So that's a play. But I wrote that play specifically to cleanse. So the rhythm of the words, the vibration of the words. I watched that play every night for 3 weeks, and it cleansed me.
But
it was amazing.
You had confronted him many years ago.
Many years before.
I'm sure in your mind you had already resolved this.
I thought I had, yeah, but there was just residue.
Okay.
Then you know what? The residue wasn't forgiving him. The residue was that after he abused me, he left me with a distorted psyche. So after he was gone, long after he was gone, I abused myself. I physically abused myself. I sexually abused myself. And I had tremendous shame and anger and fear and rage associated with that. But over a period of time, over the gestation period, between cause and effect, the effects had become disassociated from the cause. So I just thought I was this deviant, this aggressive, psychotically jealous man. When I traced it right at the back, I was able to heal not just the leak in the psyche, but all of the things I did afterwards. So this was me saying, this is what I did, and this is my shame, this is my anger, this is my judgment, this is my rage. I'm going to bring them all to the stage, and I'm going to expose them to massive light, and it's going to clean me. Do you think if you sit and watch it, it'll clean you, because it creates an allowing.
Okay. Do you think you have settled this in your mind, or do you think in years from now you might find another level of cleansing yourself or confronting things?
That's definitely cleansed, because all of the things that happened afterwards and all of the self-abuse has all gone. I feel very peaceful in my life. There are other things I'm working on, which is, I'm sometimes still in too much of a hurry, like other people. I sometimes fall out of alignment and fall back into mind, and then it's like, what about my awards? What about my money? How come I haven't got this many followers? All of those small thinking things, which is what the caretaker's about. It's about a guy that's
the caretaker. It's a
parable.
It's a parable. What is a parable?
It's like a story with a subtextual message.
Is the Bhagavad Gita a parable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right. That's depending on who you talk to. Some people just say it's an actual war, but Gandhi carried it as a parable. Okay. It was about the battle with cognition.
Is the caretaker your first parable?
It's my first parable. I wrote it initially as a prayer, and the prayer was to remind me It's a prayer I said to God to say, every time I'm asking you for stuff I'm not ready for, please pretend you didn't hear me, because I don't want it before I'm ready. And if I'm asking you for all the accolades when I haven't done the work, or if I'm asking you for more money and I haven't done the apprenticeship, please ignore me. Don't give it me till I'm ready, because it's not me talking. It's just an old script. So it's a prayer that I repeat to myself again and again. And it starts off with, Lord, God Almighty, the universe, a word about me, if you don't mind. Actually, more precisely, a word about me and my specious requests. Then it goes on to say, when I ask for this, ignore me. When I ask for that, ignore me. Just bring it at a rate that I can cope with.
And there's a video, and you're talking about this on your website, the Caretaker website. Is it thecaretaker.co.uk?
Yes, it is, yeah. And we've also done it as an audiobook.
Okay.
The audiobook has a healing property because the information in it is pulled from every scripture. There's bits in there from...
Do you read the audiobook?
No, it's read by an actor called Craig Conway, who did my film... what did he do? He did Romans 12:20.
Okay. Did you choose him, or you they choose him?
I chose him myself, yeah. I chose him myself because he's a friend of mine.
Okay. You don't like your voice?
I just wanted it. I wanted it to be... He did my play Fragile. He did my play Doorman as well. And when we were doing some of the sound effects for the play, I listened to him do it, and he was just amazing. I said to him, you'd read The Caretaker really well. And it needs to be read by a professional actor, and I'm not a professional actor. I haven't got the control that he's got.
You could argue, because I love audiobooks, and I love it when the author reads them, but you could argue if it's parable, maybe it's better if you don't read it.
It felt like that. Mm-hmm. It did feel like that, Brian, yeah. And it does, when you hear the book, it is beautiful. And it's beautiful because the rhythm of the words, again, has a cleansing effect because they're vibratory. So if you've got shadows in you, old scripts, just listening to this can be cleansing, because it's not coming from me, it's coming through me, and it's got excerpts in there from the Quran and from the Gita and from the Torah and from lots of different places.
I think audio in some ways is much more powerful than video.
Yeah.
It's just because you turn off that sight sense, and I think it really goes into your brain.
It's really good. There's a whole thing now about healing with sound. And I've certainly found that sound's affected me quite a lot. I've had real mystical experiences just with sound baths. I've got a friend called Helen Braithwaite. If you look her up on the internet, she does sound baths. And when I do my sovereignty course, we take the businessmen to this sound bath. Just being in a sound bath.
What is a sound bath?
You basically lie down like you're meditating, and she will ask you if you've got anything you want to bring, anything that you're worried about or concerned about. And what your answers will determine what instruments she plays. And she'll go around maybe singing, playing instruments, like singing bowls and all sorts of weird instruments.
She kind of performs for you.
Yeah, and you have real, talk
like
about...
in a shamanic sense, she feels like what's going on and gives you what you need.
But you have visions.
Okay.
Like you did with, was it
ayahuasca?
Ayahuasca. Well,
I definitely had visions there.
I had visions. I saw angels, I saw fairies, I saw Christ. I mean, literally see it coming out of my chest.
I believe you. I've seen things in a flotation tank. I've seen visions as well.
Amazing things. And one of them, when I was going through some lower chakra problems, she did a sound bath for me specifically. And I was lying there. I know it's going to sound strange, but I was lying there, and I suddenly felt this palpable movement in my stomach. Not like an imaginary thing, like a fist coming up through my stomach. And I could feel it, and I could feel my body swelling, right like that. And then there was 3 beings here. I've got my eyes closed, but they were here. I could see them, glowing beings, angelic beings. I don't know what they were. And I could feel this getting bigger and bigger, and it come up to my chest. And this being put her hand in my chest and pulled out a child.
That's pretty intense.
I was so emotional afterwards.
This was in the sound bath.
Yeah, and this was when I was going through the process of writing Fragile.
Okay, so a few years ago.
Yeah, so it was all to do with this child that I'd left behind. They literally pulled a child out of me in their arms and took him away.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
Geoff, before we finish up, I want to know what's next for you. Like when you think of a couple years out, or even 5 years out, what are projects you want to do, and what are like some of the frustrations you try to temper? I know you said everybody wants more followers or more money, or they want their movies to do better, or you want your play to open up in London. Like I mean, ultimately, you still have faults that us normal humans have.
Yeah.
So what can you answer both of those questions?
Yeah. I'm led completely by intuition now. So I'm led by intuition. So I used to worry about what do I aim for, because I've got so many different wants, and some of them felt noble, some of them felt selfish, some of them felt egoic. So when I started to go into deep meditation, and I had a couple of very profound epiphanies, I stopped looking at what I wanted. And I would go into my meditation and say, look, I'm thinking too small. I know I am. How can I serve? What's my fingerprint? What's my authentic self? Please show me how to serve you. And I got this from Buckminster Fuller.
Okay.
Buckminster Fuller was this amazing inventor who was pretty much unsuccessful to the age of 40, had a breakdown.
He had some big ideas, didn't he?
Amazing ideas.
Geodesic domes and a lot of these cupboard cities.
But he basically just said, I only want to invent things that help millions and millions of people. And that's when he started to think big and get big ideas. So I said, show me how I can serve you personally. What's my unique thing?
So as opposed to normal meditation that would use to kind of quiet your brain, and you would come out of that and go do the things that you want to do, you're going into meditation and being like, okay, what's the bigger picture?
Yeah, what do you want me to do?
Okay.
I don't need to know why, I just need to know where. So then I would get a vision, like I had a vision of the BAFTA.
Okay.
And when I went up to pick the BAFTA up, I looked at it, and it had the name of a film on the BAFTA that I hadn't made.
Okay.
And
this
I told,
is what, 8 years ago?
About 8 years ago, and I told the producer, she said, that's really interesting, we haven't made that. And I said, I know. And we won a BAFTA for it. Then I got a vision of me with something else. I won't go into the detail, I won't announce it, but...
Because that can be a bad thing sometimes.
Sometimes it can be, because it can start falling into ego, and people start looking to see when it's going to happen. But I don't know what the time frame is, only that I saw this thing that I'm going to go for, that I'm going to get, that I'm going to receive, and it will enable me to talk to 2 billion people at once. And the bigger picture wasn't about what you win or whether it makes any money. It's mostly just about the fact that I need to take proof to the people I'm talking with. If you're talking to 40 murderers, or to 20 damaged children, or to 250 disgruntled teachers, you need proof. I mean, ultimately, you're the proof. But they need to feel proof. So when you give them, for instance, if I pull the BAFTA out at a talk, it normally gets a standing ovation. Yeah. Not because they think I'm a great bloke, but because I'm giving them proof that something else is possible.
It's interesting when you talk about how powerful that is, because I'd expect you as the last person to pull out a BAFTA, but I can understand why you do it. And you talked about this on your podcast, and you've got a video on this on your website.
And why have it if you don't let people? I mean, I give it to people and say, hold it. What does it represent to you? I says, to me, this is alchemy. This is me taking the death of my brother, the traumatic death of my brother, and creating it into, through the alchemical process, creating it into a film that wins a BAFTA. Now, this BAFTA might seem like a statue to you, but actually it's a manifestation of my pain. I've transmuted it, literal alchemy. But also it's a golden key. It's a key into me because I've expanded, my beliefs expanded. But that, I went to full Sutton prison. That got me through 12 locked doors to talk to people who are hugely troubled, very beautiful, damaged men, like myself. I'm a damaged man. And I was able to talk to them, and they all wanted to hold it. They all wanted to touch it. And as I came out, every prison guard in that place wanted to touch it. It's because I kept saying to God, why am I taking these things? Why do I need these? I take my plays, my films, my BAFTA. They need proof.
Yeah.
And I'm saying to them, that's the key. You want to make some money, and you want to be free. That's the key. I made that from love. There was no money involved in this film. I made a film about my brother's alcoholism. No one got paid. We made it for £3,500. We couldn't get funding, from anywhere else. We made it ourselves. Everybody worked for free. It cost us money to do it because we all put the money in. I said, but that opens doors. It opens doors to me all around the world.
Right.
That actually now. We talk about realised eschatology. Just because I've won that, just because I've got proof, that has planted, if I want it, money or the exchange of energy in 80 countries. I could go to any country in the world with that and talk to people about how I did that, how I produced that through alchemy and through accessing truth. And I can go and exchange energy in whatever form that is, whether it's exchanging the money energy or just exchanging knowledge.
So does that mean there's more of those in the future?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Okay.
So I say, where do you want me to be? Let me see what you want me to do. And then I'll get a vision of something. But I know it's not about, with the BAFTA, initially when I got that, I thought, oh, it's about the BAFTA. I'm going to write more films. I'm going to make loads of money from writing films. That's not what it's been about.
Right.
The BAFTA, every talk I go to, it goes to the talks, same as the plays and the films. And I say to them, look, this is my life story. This is clubbed. This is a £2 million film. Have a feel of that. That's what £2 million looks like. For me to be able to make that film, I had to change my perception, because my perception was, who cares about a guy like me? Who cares about a Coventry bouncer? I'm just a piece of shit. I was abused at the age of 12. Even the man that I idolised didn't care about me. I was abandoned. So my old perception says that. So this is saying, to get to this place, I had to clean all that. I had to clean all that stuff up and expand. I said, I'm a factory worker from Coventry who's had a film. I've had 4 films made about my life. Do you think I'm any different to you? I'm no different to you. I'm just the same. I have to be in front of people so they can see how ordinary I am.
Okay.
And I'm not even touching the sides. I mean, I've got about 6 million versions of me in the world at the moment telling this story. But someone like Tim Ferriss or Paulo Coelho. I mean, Paulo Coelho's got 150 million versions of himself duplicated across the world, telling beautiful parables, The Alchemist being one of them.
So more creations for you. Are these only going to be in the form of plays, movies, books? Is that what's in, what is your
talks?
purpose?
Doing lots of one-on-one mentoring.
Okay.
I've been doing lots of keynote speaking, which has been very difficult because, to be honest with you, the selfish part of me wants to just hide away somewhere.
But you're a writer. Writers are...
I know, but it's not my dharma.
You're antisocial by definition,
Yeah, I
aren't
am.
you?
But my dharma is to be in front of people. When my friend was dying from cancer, he came to see me. It was a really very powerful experience. I've dedicated my book to him. And he said, I hadn't seen him for a few years, and he got in touch. He was dying of cancer. He was going to be dead within a month. And he said, I needed to tell you that you need to be in front of people. And I said, I know that, but I don't know why. I said, and it's creating lots of pain in my life because I keep being asked to go and talk for people, and I'm scared to do it.
You don't like it. It's challenging.
Too much fear.
Okay.
Then the fear's there because I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm thinking, is this what I'm meant to do? I don't know. There's so much fear there. And he said, you need to be in front of people so that they can see how ordinary you are, and that if it's possible for you to change your reality, it's possible for them. They need the proof. You're the proof. They need the testimony. You are the testimony. And I said, it was massive for me. He said he was in hospital. He'd got pancreatic cancer. He just went in for some tests, and they told him he got pancreatic cancer. He was going to die within a month. He said he goes into the toilet. He's got his thing with his drip on, and he said he sat on the toilet, and he said I just was so down, so depressed. He said, and I turned round, and he said, and there was death. He said he saw death as an entity, actually as an entity in front of him. He said, I wept with terror and turned away. And he said, I thought, I can't turn away. So he turned in and he stared at death, and he just looked at death, and death became this massive, benevolent energy. And he just said from that moment on till the moment he died, he just felt absolute bliss, even though he was dying. He saw death and recognized death was an illusion. He felt the presence of God. So when I was talking to him, there was no ego structure there.
Right.
He was just saying, this is what I see.
That you need to do.
You need to do it. And I knew that anyway, and it enabled me to realise, of course I should do it. I should always be doing the things I'm afraid to do.
Right.
Because that's where the treasure is.
But even you probably need a push every now and then. I know I do.
Yeah, I definitely do. I definitely
the man
do,
that's made it your business, and your creativity in life is discussing the confrontation of your own fears. It's still probably something that's difficult to do.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's
by definition, right?
It is just by definition. But the difficulties. I mean, I'm very good at, when I know why I'm doing something, I'm really good at doing it. I'll just turn up and do it. I just need to know why.
Okay.
And if I don't know why, it's because I've fallen out of alignment with my logos. So I realign myself. I go deeper and I just say, can you please show me clearly why I'm doing this? And then when I get the why, the how looks after itself.
Okay.
And then I go towards it. So the more difficult stuff now is not getting in my own way, not trying to rush things. My energy's changing, I'm expanding, I'm experiencing lots of wondrous things at the moment. I'm getting visions, I'm having all sorts of beautiful things happening to me. The danger is to go ahead too quickly and to rush it, and you can't rush it.
Yeah, I'm wondering what are the challenges to face you in the next few years? Is it obviously, getting comfortable with speaking in public? Is it trying not to rush things? Well, I mean, people always think, what does a guy like Geoff have as a challenge? And I just wonder what else is a challenge
Just
to you?
the biggest challenge is it's still working on old perceptions. I've still got a bit of a battle going on with old perceptions and old voices that don't want to die, and I feel them expiring in my body. I feel tremendous heat, I feel tremendous pain, I hear voices in my body that I recognize as old selves, and sometimes that's challenged in the external world. I've had quite a lot of close friends and family fall away and attack me as they're falling away, because they say, well, you think you're God. And I said, I don't think I'm God. I said, when I surrender to my potential, I am God. Of course I am, same as everybody. I said, we all are. We can't get away from that. That's what we're afraid of. People are ingenious when it comes to running away from their potential. So I said, I know on my best day that I am my best potential. But at the same point, which I know MacLeod talks a lot about, at the same point, I'm terrified of that potential because I'm worried about what I'm going to lose to get it. But when I have that fear of what I'm going to lose, I know that's an old ego talking. So it forces me to go deeper and deeper. Like with the judo, for instance. When I first started judo, I got battered. And I thought, the only way I'm going to get good at this is to get 5 suits and fully immerse myself into a full-time place. And I happened to be good friends with Neil Adams. And Neil had an Olympic class, so I trained full-time, 3 times a day in judo for 18 months. I fully immersed myself into it and became very good at it very quickly. That's what we have to do spiritually. In order to reach our potential, we have to fully immerse ourselves. You can't dip your toe into it. It asks for certainty, it asks for full commitment. So I think I'm still in that process of fully immersing. But when I do fully immerse, and I do, when I'm actually in the middle of it, everything I need comes. And it comes at the right time from the right people. But it's when our mind gets in the way and we try to second guess it and we try to join the dots before it's concluded. That's when it becomes a mind fuck, because it's too tiring.
Right.
So it's about letting go ultimately.
It's nice to hear you say that, because it's probably a product of fandom. It's like when we see people that we look up to, we assume that they've sorted their life out and they're going to be fine until they die.
Yeah.
And I remember we had Graham Hancock in here, a guy who's confronted his own consciousness with ayahuasca and all these things. I remember Nick saying, like, why would you ever go drink ayahuasca again? He's like, obviously, you're completely fine. And he just laughed at him, and he's just like, I go every year, and so it's nice to hear you say that, is that it is a journey. It's going to be a journey probably till we die.
Yeah.
In this form or whatever form. And
Yeah.
so I think, no matter whether how old you are or what you've gone through, we're going to have to always probably still construct that fear pyramid to a certain
It's a
extent.
cyclical thing. The fear pyramid continues to grow. As you get to the top of the one, you're at the bottom of another. But the fears change, and
Right.
we stop pretending that the fears are external.
Geoff, how can people find out more about you? How can they get a copy of The Caretaker, and how can they get a hold of your podcast as well?
If they go to geoffthompson.com, that's Geoff with a G, Thompson with a P. We have about, 70 or 80 free podcasts. I do one a week. We have a free newsletter. There's about 150 articles on there, and all the stuff I do is on that site. I've got 3 different sites, but you go through the portal of geoffthompson.com. So for people, if people are struggling with money, then there's hundreds of hours worth of stuff on there they can just access free whenever they want. We want to just keep duplicating ourselves, like you're doing with your stuff. I just want to keep putting stuff out there for people. And there are, everything we do, all the books. I think there's 40 books, and there's about 40 DVDs, some of the old martial arts films. They're all on the site.
Okay, and your plays, they can go see those.
Yeah, so the Fragile is coming on the old joint stock. It's on my Twitter thing. And then what else have we got? Yeah, the book, The Caretaker's coming out at the end of this month.
Okay.
So that's on the site as well. And anything we do, we announce through the free newsletter. So we've got quite a few events this year. There's a couple of films, there's a couple of plays, and there's a couple of books.
Okay, and they can sign up for your newsletter. Twitter, you're at Geoff Thompson 1. That's with a G in Jeff. And the play's coming soon. I like your videos that you do. I think the audio component has been your podcast for the last few weeks, but the videos are really good. You have, like, they're between 6 and say 18 minutes. They're free. They're on your site.
We've got about 70 on there, and I just basically talk about what I'm learning at that time. So I'm mentoring a lot of people. You can see the book in front of me. When I mentor people,
I'm
learning. So I do pages of notes, what they've taught me. Because I teach some stuff I didn't know. Like I was talking to one guy recently, and we started talking about Rumi, and I said the way of love is not a subtle argument. The door there is devastation, and I've always just understood that as meaning, love is difficult. And of course, when I spoke to this guy, he was a hugely successful businessman, a great intellect, Cambridge educated, and something came through bigger. And I just said to him, of course, what it means is. Love is a frequency, and in order to access that frequency, we have to bypass the mind. We have to devastate the mind. The mind has to be subservient. I didn't know that. I'd never known that. I had no idea that's what it meant, but that was the subtextual meaning, and it came through, and that's
through teaching.
I sat down and I write pages and pages of notes of what I learned. It's amazing.
They say the greatest way to learn is to teach something. So
a lot of literally is. I'm writing loads of notes at the moment, so I'm going to bring loads of new books out. I want to do a book on the divine economy. I've got my own publishing company, but I might look for a bigger publisher with more muscle to do that one, because it's a book I think can really help people about the fact that if we're working from love, everything else will fall into place. I
like that theme that you've been talking about today. It's going to make me think about that for the next few days. To say the least. So,
just everything is about am I coming from love? If you look at Buckminster Fuller, after his breakdown, he did an inventory on himself. He did like a guinea pig A, and he said he realised that the only times he'd been successful abundantly was when he had spontaneously worked from love. All the other times he contrived to make money and to be successful and get accolades. So he said from the age of 40, he decided he was only going to do things that he felt love for and that served millions of people. And then suddenly it's like the universe said, oh, this guy is cooking on gas. He wants to do big things. So it started throwing massive ideas at him.
Right.
And I'm the same. I ask, show me how to serve millions of people, and I just get great ideas. I mean, I've got two books, shooting a feature film, shooting a half-hour film. I've got the stage play. I've got another stage play that's going to come on, all in the next 6 to 8 months. And I've got about 5 or 6 feature films in development with different companies. I've got so many things just being presented to me. But if I try and work from money and think about money, which, like everybody else, I have my own moments when I go, fucking hell, I've got to make the mortgage. And then I start thinking really small when I get like that. But when I just meet people, like I met James Cosmo to talk about a film, and we got talking about monologues and boxing, and he started telling me stories about his life. I just said, I could do you an amazing monologue. And I did him a beautiful monologue called The Pyramid Texts. And we're shooting it on the 19th of May. It's a feature film. It's a micro budget, but that came there was no money exchanged, no one got paid, we won't get paid to make the film, we're doing it because we love it. It may lead on to things, but all I felt was, I love this guy, I love this subject, I love boxing. It's not just about boxing, it's about love, it's about regret, and it's about, if you look at the title, The Pyramid Text, it's kind of wishing somebody well. It's trying to give somebody messages in the afterlife, And I just wrote it, and it came from a pure place of bliss. That's all I want to do. I just want to be in that place.
That sounds like where you've had most of your success over the years.
All of them, yeah. When you look back.
If you're listening now, you should definitely ask yourself if what you're doing is coming from a place of love. And it's something I'm going to think about. So, Geoff, thanks so much for coming on. We could talk for a few more hours, but we're not going to. As we say on London Real, it's about the journey. And you're a man that's definitely about the journey. So thanks for coming back. If you're listening to us on iTunes, you can watch us in full video on YouTube.
Thank you.
And peace be to you.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.
All right, all the best.
God bless. Thank you.
This week on London Real,
We have the entrepreneur and mentor, Dan Pena.
I'm part Freud, part General Patton, and part Jack Welch. Self-esteem is the key to high performance. We only make changes for two reasons, Brian: desperation or inspiration. You can do anything you want that you have passion for, because that eliminates most of the crap, because most people don't follow their dream. Before I had any money, I used to go to the Rolls-Royce dealers and sit in the cars and smell the leather. Practice success before you're successful.
My audience is either going to love you or hate you. I don't know.
What gets measured gets accomplished. Perfection equals paralysis. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Dress British and think Yiddish. If you want to send your kids to a better school, if you want to be able to take care of your mother when she gets dementia, if you want to, this all takes money, not Zen.
On Sunday, London Real presents Dan Pena, your first 100 million.
When I see mistakes, if we were at war, we'd all be dead.